2%.
Okay, Senator Kruger?
Oh, she was waiting for her. Through you, Mr. President, if the sponsor will yield.
Sponsor yields.
Thank you. This is our first appropriations bill. Is that correct? It's an appropriation.
Mr. President, through you, this is the revenue bill in the state budget.
Okay. Through you, Mr. President, I want to reference the 2007 budget reform law, which clarified that the legislature shall enact a budget for the upcoming fiscal year that is determined as balanced in the general fund. Before voting on bills submitted by the governor and related legislation as amended in accordance with Article 7 of the Constitution, each House shall place on the desks of its members a report relating to each such bill and preceding final action on all such bills and legislation. Members shall be so provided with a comprehensive cumulative report relating to all such bills and legislation. The reports prepared for each House shall include, for the general fund, a summary of the proposed legislative revisions to the executive budget for the ensuing fiscal year, shall separately identify and present all legislative additions, re-estimates, other revisions that increase or decrease disbursements, and separately identify and present all legislative re-estimates and other revisions that increase or decrease available resources, which of course would include the revenue bill. Such reports shall, where practicable, display and separately identify and present all legislative additions, re-estimates, and other revisions that increase or decrease state funds and all fund spending, including an estimate of the impact of the proposed revisions on local governments and the state workforce. Do we have that available to us, Mr. President?
Through you, Mr. President, I said to Senator Kruger earlier in the evening that Senator DeFrancisco said one of the first things she would ask would be about the revenue plan or the fiscal plan. And you do have that on your desk. Looks like this. Would you like to go through it?
Through you, Mr. President. Senator Young is correct. I have the 3-page fiscal plan, but we don't have the said report that is supposed to be prepared. I have the sample from last year, or at least sections of it. This is the section from last year matching the revenue bill. I'm happy to hand it to Senator Young. That is the report that I am looking for.
Through you, Mr. President, are you saying that you're looking for a fact sheet, Senator Kruger? Because that's what this is.
Through you, Mr. President. Last year it was called a fact sheet to match the revenue bill, and there was one for each bill we were doing. So I'm perfectly happy to have it called a fact sheet as opposed to the more explicit language in the 2007 law. I don't really call I don't mind that it's called a fact sheet or not a fact sheet.
That's a similar listing of the different parts of the bill. The different part goes Part A all the way through Part H, well, actually beyond that.
Mr. President, I appreciate this is a list of the lines of what each part is, but it is not showing what is different from the governor's proposed budget, what we've added, what we have subtracted, what we have changed, re-estimates of the cost from the original governor's proposed bill. It's not the same as what I just shared with the chair from last year.
So we can go through the fiscal plan if you'd like that's on your desk.
Mr. President, I'm happy to go through the fiscal plan, but that's not the question before the House. It's where is the legally required report on the revenue bill section, from 2000, section 54 of the legislative law.
Through you, Mr. President, if you look at page 2 of the handout sheet that you were given on the fiscal year 2017 projected spending, if you look on page 2, there's executive to enacted budget reconciliation in millions of dollars. Is that what you're looking for?
No, can you give me back that fact sheet for a minute that I just handed you? I should have had multiple copies. I apologize, Mr. President. Through you. If everyone had a copy of last year's fact sheet, it would, for example, show Part A, the legislature modifies the executive proposal to achieve the following savings in this fiscal year. And then it lays out the detail language of what was denied from the governor's original proposal in Part A, then what the legislature included, then it goes to Part B. Again,
President, again, this is the report on the amended executive budget, all state agencies and operations, and we'll bring you a copy of that right away.
actually, we need one for every member under the
Okay,
law.
we'll bring that.
Okay,
We'll be able to do that, no problem.
I'll just wait for that. Thank you.
Kruger. Senator Latimer.
Thank you, Mr. President. Would the senator yield for some questions?
Yes.
Senator yields.
Thank you, Senator. I want to ask some very specific questions, Senator, from Part A. It's on page 4 of the bill, and it relates to this new provision for the STAR program and how it is to be administered. I believe that the Senate One House rejected the original executive language, but I gather it has been reinstated in some modified fashion. Senator, can you explain what the reinstatement provisions are?
This is indeed to do with the STAR program, and it's a STAR to a personal income tax credit, and people who buy a new home will receive an income tax credit.
Would the senator continue to yield?
Yes.
Senator yields.
Senator, can you describe what the existing system that's being changed to this is? I read it as a dramatic change, but I'd appreciate your analysis of it as part of the presentation of this before us tonight.
The STAR program, there is no change. It's only for new homeowners.
Will the senator continue to yield?
Yes.
Senator yields.
Thank you. Through the president, as I read the language on page 4, and I go down to about approximately in the 40s, line in the 40s, my reading of this is it says that the applicant must have held, one of the applicants must have held title to the property on the taxable status on the date of the assessment roll, and in the case, as it goes on to say, that there is a change in the applicant, then that would change the program from the current procedure, which is a reduction in your stars and your school taxes prior to you getting your school bill, to this tax credit. And if that is the case, then I would interpret it to be not just new entrants, but any situation where a home is taken over by an inherited situation, where a parent has a home and a child inherits it, or if a person is on the STAR program and changes homes, moves to a different house. It appears to be not just a new entrant to the program, but any change in the ownership of a particular unit. Now, Senator, what's your assessment of that interpretation? Is that accurate, or do you think that's perhaps inaccurate?
So, Mr. President, through you, Senator, you're correct in that if there's a change in title in a home, then it does change over to a personal income tax credit.
Thank you. Will the senator continue to yield?
Yes.
Thank you. I think then it looks like it's a much broader changeover for a larger number of people than perhaps we would have thought if it was just somebody who was entering the program for the first time. Now, there is a change in the system whereby you will apply for a tax credit in the following year. Now, am I correct in understanding that that would create a cash flow issue, because where you would have gotten the reduction of your school taxes, say in 2016, you now have to get the financial benefit by applying in 2017 as a tax credit, and therefore you could well have a cash flow difference between when you got the benefit previously and when you get the benefit now under this program. Is that a correct understanding of this?
Mr. President, through you, no, that will not be an issue, and it's because there's an advanced tax credit that's involved, so the check would be cut to the homeowner before the taxes were due.
Through the President, will the Senator continue to yield?
Yes.
Is there any provision made in here that differentiates an enhanced star owner, who is a person of more limited income and a senior citizen, 65 or older, with a more limited income, that would protect them in any way, shape, or form from this cash concerns?
So through you, Mr. President, for Enhanced Star, it will be the traditional requirements, but with the new system if there's a change in title.
Thank you, Senator. Will the Senator continue to yield through the President?
Yes.
Thank you, Senator. There is a general statement that says that provisions will be made for special cases, such as cooperative apartments or properties that are located in two districts. Can you describe what the mechanism is for provisions and what that may mean in a concrete way? I'm not sure I know what property located in two districts means. There are obviously cooperative apartments that operate with the benefit in a completely different way than the private homeowner would be. So the question is, what specifies those provisions for those special cases?
Mr. President, through you, basically it's a mechanism and it's a differential between two districts. So you would get an average between the two amounts for your credit.
And through the Chair, through the President, again, will the Senator yield?
Yes.
Senator yields.
Help me understand, Senator, when we say two districts, what are we talking about? Is this a piece of land that somehow crosses two school district borders? Or is there some other mechanism by which we describe two districts? Generally speaking, I'm sorry.
Mr. President, through you, yes, Senator, you're correct that it would be, for example, a property that crosses between two separate school districts.
And the final question in this area, through the President, Senator, would you continue to yield?
Yes.
Senator yields.
The details in this legislation have to have some meat fleshed out. Where do we reside the authority to interpret and to lay out the specifics? Obviously, people who benefit from this program will have specific questions, and how will that be structured through this legislation?
Mr. President, through you, any issues with interpretation would be handled through the New York State Department of Taxation and Finance, just as the system exists right now.
And Mr. President, if the Senator would continue to yield, I just have one additional question on a different part of this legislation.
Senator yields.
Thank you, Senator. I would direct your attention to Part BB, which begins on page 50, and over the next couple of pages, it relates to an enhanced financing of the equine health and safety program at racetracks. And in this language, it identifies there will be an increase in a VLT contribution to the equine health and safety from 1% to 1.6%. It highlights that there's a total dollar amount of $2.4 million, of which this enhanced purse is $1 million. With that $1 million being redirected from the VLTs to the equine health and safety, what, if anything, compensates the way that $1 million will be used for its other existing entities that the VLTs fund, which would be payments to host communities, education contributions, whatever else those other expenses are?
So through you, Mr. President, actually, this 1 to 1.6% does not affect education dollars at all. And as a matter of fact, the extra collection of $700,000 would go to the state for equine testing, and that comes from the handle.
Mr. President, Senator, if you continue to yield, if it doesn't affect education, though, there is still some reallocation of money. If $1 million is going from the VLTs to the equine health and safety, that's $1 million that's not being used in some other fashion. Does the legislation specify how that $1 million is made up for, what other entities are to receive funding under the present VLT formulas of compensation?
Back funds would come from the betting pool.
Senator, Mr. President, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Senator Latimer. Thank you, Senator Young. Senator Kruger will return to you now. I know you were waiting for the distribution of papers throughout the chamber.
Well, I was, and I guess I still am. Am I still waiting for the distribution of papers? They're coming? Because I have another line of questioning I could continue with pending that. How do you want to do this? 63 senators. Through you, Mr. President, in discussion with the chair, we are still waiting for the 63 copies of said required report to be made and delivered to each chair, to each senator. But I do have another line of questioning. So, through you, Mr. President, if the sponsor will yield.
Of course.
Sponsor yields.
Thank you. And this line of questioning all relates to the gambling sections of the revenue bill, so I don't know whether Senator Young wants to be the answerer of the questions or someone else.
If you would just give us a moment.
For you, Mr. President, if the sponsor will yield.
Sponsor yields.
Thank you. There is a new Part SS in the revenue bill before us, which relates to NASA OTB VLT license transfer. And as I read the bill, and it's a fairly complicated set of changes, this would involve an arrangement where Nassau, the County of Nassau and its OTB would be transferring their right to have a VLT facility to Aqueduct Racetrack and Racino in Queens. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. President, yes.
And through you, Mr. President, if the sponsor would continue to yield.
Sponsor yields.
Could the sponsor explain to me what the actual financial arrangement that this would result in? What is happening? Who is getting what money?
Basically, this is per a separate agreement approval given by the Gaming Commission, and as of right now, that agreement has not been established.
So through you, Mr. President, if the sponsor would continue to yield.
Sponsor
Yes.
yields.
So while this is language in the revenue bill we're being asked to pass tonight, and it transfers machines from Nassau County OTB, which don't yet exist at a facility that doesn't yet exist, to Aqueduct Racetrack in Queens and a facility run by Genting that does exist, There's no detail about what the arrangement is. There's at least news story that there is some kind of memorandum of understanding. Can the sponsor explain what that memorandum of understanding is or would need to be between whom?
So these numbers are from the new.
For you, Mr. President, currently there are no machines in Nassau County, but there's a statutory authority to have those machines in Nassau, and so this gives that authority to transfer the machines.
Through you, Mr. President, if the sponsor would continue to yield.
Yes.
Sponsor yields.
Thank you. I agree. That's how I read the bill as well. But my question is, what is going to be transferred under what financial arrangement? Is there X amount of money that will be paid to the Nassau OTB because they will no longer have the right to create a VLT site? They will have, so to speak, under this bill, sold their statutory rights to these machines to a company called Genting in Queens.
It's the same. Through you, Mr. President, in most cases, it's the same application as if they were posted in Nassau. So whatever Nassau would pay to the state, it would be the same for these machines.
Through you, Mr. President, if the sponsor would continue to yield.
Yes.
Sponsor yields.
Okay. So, let's hypothetically make me Nassau OTB. Let's make Senator Young Genting at Aqueduct. Is that okay? Let's make my council the state of New York in this story. I am, through this bill, statutorily giving up my right to have the facility and the machines, and through this bill, Senator Genting has that right handed to her. Does this bill actually transfer the authority in statute from Nassau OTB to Senator Young?
Mr. President, actually it transfers to the authority pursuant to an agreement by the Gaming Commission, as I previously stated.
Sorry. It transfers from OTB Nassau to whom? You said the authority. What's the authority?
President, what I mean by authority is whoever is operating the VLT facility at Aqueduct, and again, it's pursuant to an agreement through the Gaming Commission.
Through you, Mr. President, the sponsor would continue to yield.
Yes.
Sponsor yields.
Thank you. Who establishes how much the facility at Aqueduct has to pay to Nassau OTB, and under what formula is that? Is that set in this bill?
Mr. President, that's established by the two parties.
Mr. President, if the sponsor will continue to yield.
Yes.
Sponsor yields.
So, in this bill, we're saying these two parties can make a deal, but the deal's not laid out, but it has to be approved by the Gaming Commission? Correct. Through you, Mr. President, the sponsor would continue to yield.
Yes.
Sponsor
Thank
yields.
you. How long must this contract be for, or what happens at the time that the contract ends? Is there statutory authority for these machines at all, or does it revert back to Nassau?
So through you, Mr. President, there's cases where they could revert back, but there's no sunset included in this provision.
Through you, Mr. President, if the sponsor would continue to yield.
Yes.
So this kind of arrangement has happened before, because there are cases. Can you give me the examples of where else this happened or has happened?
Mr. President, actually, this is like a regular contract, so there could be situations where it would be allowed for Nassau to revoke the authority. So, for example, non-payment of taxes, those types of situations where it actually is a breach of the contract.
Through you, Mr. President, if the sponsor will continue to yield.
Yes,
Sponsor
through you.
yields.
And actually, I guess if you look at the paragraph, I think that the information is pretty clear in it.
You're more awake than I am. Which paragraph? Want to reference the paragraph for me?
Page 78, if you look at, starting on line 23, there's quite a bit of detail in that provision.
Mr. President, if the sponsor would continue to yield.
Yes.
Thank you. So this paragraph does lay out that Aqueduct Racetrack should be going into some kind of contractual agreement with NASA OTB. Is it just a private contract between these two, or is it actually the Gaming Commission who actually has to sign off on what this contract says?
Mr. President, the language says that they can enter into an agreement, but they must in order for the authority to transfer to Aqueduct.
In order for the authority to transfer to Aqueduct, they must, I don't think I understood the end of the sentence.
Into this agreement.
Does the state gaming commission have to approve this contract for them to go forward?
Previously stated several times, the Gaming Commission would have to approve that.
Through you, Mr. President, the sponsor continue to yield.
Yes.
Sponsor yields.
Even though the contract does not exist yet and hence has not been reviewed by the Gaming Commission, is there an estimated value of the 1,000 machines going to Aqueduct and an expectation of some specific amount of income by NASA OTB?
Mr. President, actually, when you talk about anticipated money, when all of the 1,000 machines go into effect, it's estimated that it would be about $25 million going to Nassau County.
Through you, Mr. President, if the sponsor would continue to yield.
Sponsor yields.
Senator Bonsa, could I borrow that? Yeah. So just I want to give you some more clarification. So for example, in the first year, for 400 machines, it would be $9 million. And then with 1,000 machines, as I stated, it would actually eventually go to $25 million. 65% of the net winnings would go to the state of New York, by the way.
Through you, Mr. President, if the sponsor would continue to yield.
Sponsor yields.
Thank you. So 65 goes to New York State, which then we assume 35% remains with Genting, out of which they would pay Nassau County OTB? Yeah.
There's somebody in the House that has a lot of more specific information about this, and I would like to yield to my colleague, Senator Jack Martins.
Happy to transfer my questions to Senator Jack Martins.
Without objection, the chair will recognize Senator Martins.
Thank
You, Senator.
So,
Happy to answer any questions you have.
very much, Senator. So my last question was, 65% of the revenue from these ultimately 1,000 machines is supposed to go to the state, meaning 35% goes to Genting, out of that 35%, they then pay a percentage to Nassau County or a set fee to Nassau OTB?
The arrangement between Nassau, OTB, and Genting has been discussed. Obviously, there are terms that they have agreed to. They are to memorialize that in an agreement that has yet to be formed, but the particulars are that they will receive $9 million the first year, $9 million the second year, $25 million the third year, and thereafter adjusted for a cost of living adjustment. The $9 million and $9 million are tied to the use of 400 machines, and when they're able to phase in the full use of the 1,000 machines, it ramps up to $25 million. So to answer your question, yes, Genting will be paying the $9 million, and the $25 million from what they expect to be their net proceeds, given the figures that they have calculated as to what their expectation is for revenue from these machines as they are capable of doing. So based on their own revenue estimates, they have calculated that. Again, it's an agreement that has yet to be memorialized and subject to Gaming Commission approval.
Through you, Mr. President, if the sponsor would continue to yield.
Yes.
Senator yields.
Thank you. Appreciate the answers. Genting currently has 5,545 VLTs at Aqueduct, and we're talking about moving in an additional 1,000 through this arrangement. My understanding is, though, that it's different kinds of machines. Can you explain how these 1,000 machines will be different than the 5,400 currently at Aqueduct?
Yeah, I understand that they have authority to have up to that many machines. They actually have less than that. I think they actually have 5,000 machines, and therefore they have flexibility to be able to incorporate a number of machines immediately and then phase in the others over a period of time. And certainly, the machines are similar. They are in keeping with the machines that they have there, and obviously, not to substitute our understanding of those machines for those of the parties, either Genting or Nassau OTB. Suffice it to say that they are of a type that is easily incorporated into their business model, and they're willing to accept them and to enter into this agreement. And frankly, just to clarify, what we are being asked to approve here today is merely the authority for Nassau County OTB to be able to enter into an agreement with Aqueduct for this purpose on terms that they have negotiated, but they will memorialize in a further writing, which will again be on the terms that I've previously discussed. Thank you, Mr. President.
Through you, Mr. President, if the sponsor would continue to yield.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yields.
Okay. So to be a little more technical about the questions I just asked, so it's 5,000 now, but they have the right to add another 545 regardless of the Nassau deal. But the 1,000 that they would be allowed to add through this specific contract would be allowed to be a different kind of machine with different kinds of gaming, and it's been led to believe a higher revenue projection than the kinds of machines that currently are approved through statute at every other site in New York State. Is that correct?
Mr. President, through you, frankly, I think the machines may actually be very similar to the machines that they have there, but your point, Senator, is well made. The revenue and the taxable, the taxes that will be paid on these machines will be different. They will be consistent with the taxes that would be expected to be paid through a facility should Nassau OTB have opened a facility within Nassau County. Genting will be responsible for paying pursuant to that same tax structure for the purposes of those machines once they are incorporated into their facility at Aqueduct.
Through you, Mr. President, if the sponsor will continue to yield.
Senator
Yes.
yields.
Just to clarify, if Nassau OTB had kept their statutory right to open a facility in Nassau County, and they're not, and I don't actually have a problem with that, would they have been able to use the newer, slicker, fancier machines, or would they have been required under the existing statute to use the same kinds of machines that all the other racinos in New York State have?
Mr. President, through you, I don't know about any newer, slicker, shinier type of machines, but Senator, they would use whatever machines are authorized pursuant to the enabling statute that we passed a few years ago, and those same machines and whatever qualifications there are for those newer, sleeker machines would equally apply to Aqueduct.
Through you, Mr. President, if the sponsor will continue to yield.
Yes.
Senator yields.
I do have multiple reasons for being curious about newer kinds of machines, and if I had the right terminology of how the newer machines were different from the older machines, I would use it, but alas, I'm actually not a gambler. My concerns are on two levels here. One, this state has gone through a series of processes, different timelines and constitutional amendments to allow or not allow certain kinds of gambling. So I'm curious whether these new machines constitute actually a new type of gambling activity, and one, is there any reason for us to be concerned about it being more gambling addictive? And two, is there a reason for us to believe that it will dramatically increase the revenue generated by those 1,000 machines for Genting, and should that be factored in any way to the decisions we make about our other racinos in New York State? Are we somehow giving them a business advantage within this contract deal where they can not only get the Nassau County machines moved to their site, but they can get the bigger, better, make more money, perhaps make you more addicted type machines?